2012 to 2016 were a pretty rough time for Nintendo. The Wii U was a complete and total flop. The 3DS was doing just kind of okay, and Nintendo's overall consistency with new games and their quality was just kind of all over the place. Some years you'd get console-defining games like Kid Icarus Uprising or Super Mario Maker, and then others you'd get stuck with Wii Sports Club and Chibi Robo Ziplash. But strangely enough, amidst all of that emerged a brand new IP, Splatoon. And even stranger, it wasn't a platformer or an open-world adventure game or a party game or really anything Nintendo was known for at the time. It was a third-person shooter. So yeah, failing console, brand new IP, barely tapped genre for the company, sounds like a recipe for disaster. And yet somehow, it wasn't. Splatoon was and still is by far and away Nintendo's most popular new IP in years. With its initial popularity and continued success thanks to the Switch's sequels, Nintendo kind of considers it a tentpole franchise now, right up there with Mario and Zelda. But how did it do it? How did Splatoon find success while Nintendo was failing just so miserably? Well, let's find out together. I'm Jax, this is Grand Starbit, let's get into it. Developed and published by Nintendo, Splatoon was released on May 29, 2015 for the Wii U. The game is a team-based third-person shooter with a classic Nintendo twist on things. Instead of focusing on eliminating other opponents, you cover the ground with ink using various different weapons, with the side that has the most percentage covered at the end winning it all. And what makes the most sense for the player to play as to shoot out ink? Squids! That are also kids. The longer you think about it, the weirder it starts to get, but hey, it worked. With new maps rotating in and out constantly, lots of different weapons to unlock, all sorts of cool clothes to try on, and an incredibly vibrant cast of side characters to interact with, at the time it was really easy to get hooked into Inkopolis and all things squid related. And I was one of those people then. The game was released literally just a few weeks before my birthday, and I think all that I asked for that year was the game and the amiibo, and I still have all of those to this day. But with the odds so stacked against it, how did Splatoon manage to capture so many people like myself's attention back then? Well, the reasons are fairly spread out throughout both the game's development and gameplay itself. Splatoon initially started development as one of many experimental projects a small team of Nintendo employees were working on, all headed up by one of Animal Crossing's creators, Katsuya Iguchi. After about half a year and 70 different game design proposals, they eventually landed on a prototype made by programmer Shintaro Saito. Normally we wouldn't have footage of these sorts of things, maybe just vague explanations and interviews, but they actually showed the early project at the Game Developers Conference in 2018. It's very simple, just 4 white blocks and 4 black blocks shooting ink, but it shows off the basic foundations for what Splatoon would eventually become. The team really liked this prototype, and after presenting it to their managers, it got approved to become a full game. The game was slowly built up from there, wanting to somehow incorporate squids thanks to the ink mechanic, and expanding on that concept by adding the ability to hide in the ink and climb walls with it for a sense of verticality. But Splatoon's development was slowly becoming a little unfocused. The developers were having a hard time making it just a simple and fun game that would be easily accessible. Shigeru Miyamoto himself apparently wasn't too impressed either, saying that the game just didn't really have any appeal. The team was also having trouble incorporating the squid idea, since they needed a human to hold the various weaponry, and believed a squid-human hybrid just wouldn't sell. They tried different concepts like rabbits and even Mario, but none of them were working. It was around then when the game's directors, Tsubasa Sakaguchi and Yusuke Amano, had an epiphany. Why not have the humans that hold the guns turn into squids? This idea basically caused a chain reaction of both new ideas and explanations for the mechanics they'd already developed, such as instead of just dropping into the ink, you were turning into a squid to swim in it. And the game basically snowballed from there into what we know now. Splatoon's origins are incredibly fascinating to me. I think it's really interesting that the entire squid thing, an essential premise to the whole game, came in so late into development, just being a few months before the official reveal at E3 2014. But the idea clearly paid off well, and that's actually where we come to our first point. Splatoon was just a really nice breath of fresh air. Nintendo wasn't exactly trying many new things at this point in time. I mean, all you have to do is look at how they released 2 different new Super Mario Bros. Games within the same year to see that there was either clearly some sort of creative bankruptcy or just straight up cockiness still riding the high of the Wii and DS's success. But Splatoon's dev team was intentionally put together as mostly younger members who were given a lot of freedom to figure out and create the game they wanted to make. And since a lot of them were 90s kids, the team implemented a lot of that style all around Splatoon's world. And visually, it really stood out compared to the just very cheerful and bright Mario or generally somewhat serious Zelda. Splatoon as a concept is just also super creative. A game based on how much ground you can cover with paint, but you're playing as squid people think? I mean, come on, how cool is that? The game takes place in the city of Inkopolis, where humanoid squids, known as Inklings, as well as a plethora of other anthropomorphic sea creatures, live and engage with one another in a similar manner to regular humans. However, Inklings only have one real primary pastime: turf wars. You and 3 other teammates fight against another team of 4 using different weapons to spray ink any and everywhere you can, with both teams getting their own designated color at the start of the match. You have 3 minutes to cover as much ground as you can while avoiding the other team's attacks and coverage with their own ink. At the end of the 3 minutes, Judd the Cat comes out to determine the exact percentage each team has covered, and with that, declare the winner. Pretty simple. One of the game's most important aspects is, since they're both a kid and a squid, Inklings can transform into a squid at any point you want. Doing this allows you several important advantages other than just being a funny little invisible squid guy. Anytime you're near your own ink, you can drop into it to swim quickly around the map, allowing you to escape enemies or reach areas of the map at a much faster pace. If a wall can be inked, you can even make your way up that to reach potentially new and higher areas as well. While submerged, your ink and health will both replenish, and while you'll slowly heal if you don't touch the enemy ink again, going under is the only way to refuel other than just dying and respawning, so you're really incentivized to swim around as much as you can. Or you could use this to just hide around a corner and ambush the enemy when they're least expecting it. It wouldn't be a shooter without a variety of different weapons to pick from, and Splatoon is certainly no exception. While the series has since added several new types of weaponry in 2 and 3, the first game launched with a simple trio of shooters, chargers, and rollers. Shooters are your standard affair of weapons. They tend to shoot at a normal rate of fire and at a medium range, however there are variations that shoot closer at a quicker rate or further at a slower rate. All you need to do with these bad boys is hold down the fire button and let the paint fly. Chargers are your snipers of the game, with most having mid to extreme distance and high damage. However, the difference between the charger class of Splatoon and any regular old sniper is that, like the name suggests, to get maximum range and effect, you need to hold the button down and let it fully charge before throwing out a straight line of ink to headshot someone across the map. And finally, the game's most unique class are the rollers, which don't take a typical role in any other shooter and are more just a fun reference to paint rollers in real life. But that doesn't mean they aren't really fun weapons to use. When you press the fire button, you'll swing paint out in front of you, and if you continue to hold it down, you can roll ink around and damage opponents if you run into them with it. Each class offers a wide variety of different options with different stats, and most importantly, each offers different sub-weapons and special weapons. Sub-weapons act like your typical throwables such as different types of grenades, but Splatoon offers a bit more variety as well, such as sprinklers that shoot your team's ink all over the place, and splash walls that create a small barrier of ink cover for you. Special weapons are one of the most fun and standout points in the game, to me at least. As you cover turf, you slowly fill a meter up, and once it's completely filled, you can let loose a potentially game-changing move, like the killer whale that unleashes a supersonic one-shot across the entire map, or my personal favorite back in the day, the ink strike, which let you use the map on the gamepad to pick a spot and cause an explosive vortex of ink. There was just something super satisfying about being able to launch one of those and get several eliminations. And here's where we land on the second point of how Splatoon succeeded. It absolutely nails Nintendo's first serious attempt at the third-person genre. Up until this point, Nintendo had never really done it beforehand. We had Kid Icarus Uprising a few years prior, but that was developed by Masahiro Sakurai's team Sora Limited, and not necessarily Nintendo themselves. They had dipped their toes into the first-person shooter genre with GoldenEye and Perfect Dark on the 64, and more notably the Metroid Prime series, but again, none of those were developed solely by Nintendo, just published. So tackling what is essentially a brand new genre for them almost immediately just opened the floodgates for lots of new ideas, which, like I stated earlier, resulted in something visually fresh, but that also physically feels fresh too. Splatoon is just an incredibly simple premise that works super well in execution. It offers a surprising amount of unique and different playstyles depending on the weapon you pick or how you want to play the game. If you prefer playing shooters aggressively and fighting as many opponents as possible, you can ink your way straight to the middle with a roller or a charger to try and control that area and take on everyone who comes at you. Or if you prefer a bit more of a laid-back approach, as everyone runs forward, you can stay back at spawn to cover as much ground as you can on your side of the map. Splatoon was even one of the few games that implemented the gamepad surprisingly well, something that every dev, including Nintendo, was struggling to do. You could play little mini-games on it between matches, and it worked super well as a map where you could see all of your teammates and launch to them for support if they were struggling, or even if you just wanted a quick glance at how much of the map had been covered by ink at that point. Splatoon's excellent take on the third-person formula was both just incredibly innovative and genuinely really fun, which were both things Nintendo really struggled with during the Wii U's generation. Outside of the main multiplayer portion of the game is the explorable hub world, Inkopolis Plaza. Here you can wander around and see various other inklings you may have encountered online just hanging out. Back when Miiverse was still a thing, you could even see what people were saying about the game, or even drawings. Splatoon 2 and 3 technically have this feature as well, just integrated with Twitter, and it works about the same, but I don't know, Miiverse had a lot more charm to it. Inkopolis Plaza is also home to a number of things to do and see, like Inkopolis News. It's a brief segment led by the game's idol duo of Callie and Marie that plays for you when you open the game to announce the current stage rotation, updates, and any other news. It's been nearly 10 years and Marie is still best girl, don't come at me. The plaza is also home to various shops, such as Ammonites where you can purchase and try out weapons, Cooler Heads where you can buy various hats, Jelly Fresh where you can find clothes, and Trim Kicks where you can buy shoes. If you played casually, your outfits didn't particularly matter too much, but if you were a bit more competitive, each one did come with a small ability as well as the option to potentially unlock more abilities depending on its star power. The only real downside to this is that what extra abilities you could unlock were kind of random, so it was a bit difficult to get the perfect gear you might have wanted without some research and grinding. Obviously not a big deal to most people, just a little annoying. Or hey, if you don't like any of that and just want to play by yourself, Splatoon has a fun little story mode. It's nothing super crazy by any means, it's really just some light platforming and basic PvE action, but it's a fun break from the main multiplayer modes, and personally, I think it helped me get a bit better at the game too. And with that, we arrive at our third and final point that's kind of related to all of that, but maybe not as much as the other sections were. It's still important though, I promise. Splatoon was supported incredibly well post-launch. It wasn't just a one and done. It was a reason to keep turning your Wii U back on every once in a while to see what was new. They added weapons constantly after the game was released, doing it about once a week for several months. They even added 2 entirely new weapon types, sloshers and splatlings. New stages were a little more sporadic, but by the end of the summer, summer, they had already added 6 and would go on to add 5 more afterwards as well. They even added 2 more modes to the ranked playlist, Tower Control and Rainmaker. Nintendo was trying their absolute best to keep people's attention for as long as they could. And while I think they succeeded with the standard stuff like guns and maps, there was no better way to keep people coming back than with the game's biggest post-launch events out of all of them, Splatfests. Splatfests had you pick between 2 different teams, like dogs versus cats, and then for a specific time frame, any and every battle you participated in would contribute to your team's overall score. The decision making effectively just came down to popularity and how much winning each side did, so it's not like it was super elaborate or anything, but man, were these a good time. They had some wild third-party themes then too, like Autobots versus Decepticons from Transformers, or SpongeBob versus Patrick of all things. These were by far and away one of Nintendo's smartest moves with Splatoon. Super simple mini-events every couple of weeks to have you defend something you ordinarily wouldn't really care about, like roller coasters versus water slides, is an amazing way to generate some social media buzz, and also have people fight to the death over water slides, of all things. Splatoon was incredibly well received upon release, and continually afterwards as well. It was praised for being exactly what it needed to be at the time. Just something new. Something that felt like it had that Nintendo soul in it after feeling like that very thing had been missing in a lot of Nintendo's more recent outings then. And while Splatoon certainly didn't save the Wii U from its slow and painful death, it did end up becoming the 6th highest selling game for the console, selling better than Mario Maker, Wind Waker HD, and Mario Party 10. Splatoon would even go on to get 2 sequels on the Switch, and with both of those entries being even more successful than the original, it's safe to assume that Splatoon isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And if you couldn't tell at this point, I really like Splatoon. I have good memories associated with each game at this point, and I can't wait to see how the series evolves with Nintendo's next console, whenever that is. Hopefully soon. And hey, maybe I'll cover 2 and 3 at some point too. If that's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments. And let me know if you like Splatoon back on the Wii U as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Once again, I'm Jax. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe, and I will see you in a bit.